So I believe we are live in both locations. Danny, welcome to Living Off Rentals.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. I know we had a little bit of a false start last time because you were in Mexico with a massive storm. And so if for people who are tuning into this, we had an event set up last time for this interview, and we weren't able to do it because, the nature of Danny's work is he's traveling all over the place and always in different Airbnbs and that sort of thing. So just to provide a little bit of background for the listeners. So Danny wrote the book on optimizing your vacation rentals to get the most income and, make them as efficient as possible. The book's called Optimize Your B&B, the definitive guide to ranking #1 in Airbnb search. And he consults with owners every day to improve their listings and overall operations. He worked for Airbnb itself, so he's got the inside scoop, and his advice is extremely invaluable to people who are just getting started, especially. I read this book or actually I listened to it about 2 years ago, and I learned so many great tips from it. So I'm really pumped to have you on the show today. So
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So and you're calling in from Colombia, right?
Yes, Medellín, Colombia.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll get into, you mentioned beforehand that you're working on your first actual investment, not just, listings, but you're thinking about buying a place. So I want to ask you about that in Colombia, because I don't have a whole lot of experience with real estate in Colombia. So it'll be interesting to hear more about that. But I'd love to first hear a little bit about your background and kind of how you got started with short-term rentals.
Yeah, it's very good timing because I actually came here just a few days ago from Mexico, and I cut my trip short in Mexico specifically because of a real estate opportunity. A few, and that's why I'm here.
Nice.
But if we'll first start off, we'll rewind back to 2013. January 2013 is when I entered Airbnb, at least psychologically. My roommate at the time, I was unemployed. I quit a job. I was unemployed and I was looking for jobs. And my roommate mentioned to me in the kitchen, just passing, just nothing, just random. And he said, I heard about this company called Airbnb. Maybe, they're a startup. Maybe you like them. So I looked into them, and right away, I was like, this is how I travel. I like this idea. I want to work there. So I got an interview. They said no, but I stayed in touch. I was persistent with my recruiter. A few months go by, and they did hire. They gave me another interview. I had 18 interviews, I think, actually, over like 2-week period. They hired me in a different role, same department, finance. And I worked there for a bit, and then I went into property management, and then I started my own property management company. And then I started optimizemybnb.com, which is where I help Airbnb hosts optimize their listing. And then I wrote the book, Optimize Your Airbnb. And then now I live in Airbnbs as well. So I've probably passed 1,600 nights. What makes me unique in the industry is that I have all of these. I was an employee. I'm a superhost. I'm a property manager. I work with hosts every single day. I'm a guest. I can't have any more experiences with Airbnb. So I see it from all sides.
Yeah. Do you get worn out? I mean, moving from Airbnb to Airbnb like that?
No, actually, there was a time like maybe 2 years ago where I did feel like maybe it's ready to settle down. But no, I gotta say it's getting better. Actually, I think it's because I'm actually of more of an introvert personality, and so where when I was in one city in San Francisco for so long, looking back on it, it was basically like wasted years. I was just too comfortable. I wasn't expanding my group of friends, my knowledge. Traveling, it forces me to feel like I'm really living. So it's rewarding more than it is. There are difficult parts though, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. So I guess let's start from the top. What does it mean to optimize an Airbnb? I think some people are maybe unfamiliar with that term.
Yeah. If you ask me that question in an elevator, my elevator pitch would be, I help Airbnb hosts make more money. That's the top level. If we go down a little bit, I do that by helping them rank high in search, or helping them increase the guest experience, which helps with the reviews, which helps with the search. So everything goes to ranking high in search, whether that's directly optimizing the online listing, which is the services that I started doing, Superhost listing optimization, or if it's increasing your hosting abilities, whether that's doing automated messages, getting better amenities, giving better instructions for check-in or how to get from the airport to your door, giving a guidebook, whatever.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I don't hear a lot of people talk about ranking high in search. I think, most people think of just Google when you say that. But you're talking about Airbnb's search. So your listing comes up on the top, right? So I guess, can you just give a little bit of an overview of how that happens? Because I think a lot of people think I just put my property on Airbnb, and if someone searches for it, they find it.
Yeah, that's what I think, or that's what I thought for Amazon. Same thing there, with my book. Luckily, there wasn't much competition there. But whereas if you type in Airbnb book on Amazon, you're going to get like 50 books, 10 of which are, have good reviews. On Airbnb, you go to wherever, any big city, even really a small city, you're going to get 300 listings in like a small little, 5-block radius. And how I discovered this was when I was working at the property management company right after Airbnb. It was an Airbnb property management company, vacation rentals only. And my bonus was based on the revenue of the company. And so with the listings that were lagging, I would go in and I would think, how can I what's going on here? And I would tweak things up, change the photos, change the title, maybe better title, change the text. And I would notice pretty quickly within 30 minutes, no kidding, oftentimes within 30 minutes, 1 hour, I'd get a booking on that listing, which had been vacant for 2 weeks. And so you can imagine it didn't take too long for me to pick up on this pattern. And so that's what I started doing. Since then, it's grown. There's pricing strategies. There is a whole bunch of photo strategies, title strategies, text strategies. It's also showing the system that you're a complete host, completing the amenities section, completing the accessibility section, completing the host profile, responding to reviews. Some of this has to do with conversion, where it might not be like thinking of Google. You want to rank high on search, but if your actual website is low quality and you don't convert people to stay, or you don't make people stay on your website, they click away right away. So you have a good search rank at first, but you're going to slowly fall on the ranks. So that's where a lot of strategies come from. I really focus on converting the guest rather than doing what typically most people do. A big difference is the text. A lot of people advise, put a lot of text in there, flowery text, make the guest feel like they're in your space. And I say, no, they're not reading that text. And you're probably burying the most important things in that text that the guest is probably not reading. So I say, bullet point them out and let the guest know what they're getting. That's not directly a ranking factor. Airbnb doesn't see that and say, okay, they bullet points, but it converts more. And that thus it's a ranking factor, because at the end of the day, whatever listing's making Airbnb more money, probably going to rank pretty high.
That's a great point. So they track how many people will look at the listing compared to how many people actually book it. And if people are looking and not booking, then you're getting pushed down, basically.
And just one really important thing to add on to that, Airbnb is not Google, the search. Airbnb sees all of the journey. So it's not enough just to get the click and get the booking. Airbnb is also going to see the review. Whereas Google, they don't see the review of the shoes that the guy bought, Nike shoes, whatever website they went to. They're blind to that. They just see how many clicks this guy's getting.
I see. Okay. Got it. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So if you're saying, so if the review is bad, but you got lots of bookings, then that pushes you down as well. So you got the whole experience, the whole journey for the guest has to be top notch.
Yeah. Thanks for closing the gap there. I didn't mention that. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay. So I'm curious then, with all the people you've worked with on this over the years, what do you see as maybe the top couple biggest mistakes or maybe misconceptions or problems that you see when you start to work with a new client?
The first thing is you have to understand if you'll be successful in this line of work. A lot of people won't be. And it's because a lot of people are employees. They have a 9-to-5 job or whatever. They go in, they're an accountant like I was. They follow instructions, and then that's it. But if you do Airbnb, you're running a business, the customer's always right mindset has to be there, which is like an ego. You got to put your ego down if you're going to make the guest right all the time. And I'm in an Airbnb right now. And when I stay for more than a month, I usually ask for a discount, as I did here. And the listing had a 4.5, by the way. So your viewers, your listeners are probably familiar with Airbnb. 4.5 is like an F. It's pretty low on Airbnb out of 5, by the way. But it's actually it's in the same building as a apartment that I wanted to buy here in Medellín months ago, but that deal never went through. So I thought it would be kind of cool to live in the building. So I get there and I'm having problems with the internet right away. And then I ask him, I'm like, hey, the internet's not working like for the whole day today. And he's like, okay, he basically said, yeah, we, because you got a discount, we decided not to refill the Wi-Fi. And so I said, nice. Well, I wish you would have told me that, that's not how it works. That would have affected my decision. But it's the point is, for him, it seemed normal, but it's a mistake in terms of running a business. And so is he a right fit for this? Probably not, because he has a 4.5 and I'm seeing myself, this is like an obvious, I locked myself out. I forgot the keys inside. And he had me go to a locksmith. And I said, you don't have a key here? And he said, well, it's in another city, so it takes 24 hours to get there. But what if, this is a rather common situation if you don't have an electronic keypad. It's happened to me twice in 1,600 nights. But what if there's an emergency? There's reasons why you would want to get into the house. And so I think for this host, it's better for him to hire a property manager. That's the first thing. Really think about, I have an article on my website, and it basically, if you read that article and at the end you think I can do this, then you'll probably be a good host. Because my point in that article is not selling you on being an Airbnb host. It's trying to scare you away from being an Airbnb host. Because my whole thing is, it's not really to help hosts, actually. I'm doing this so guests have a better experience. So I have a better experience. Very selfish of me.
Yeah.
And so that's on the service side. I'll name one more thing that everyone that 99% probably of your viewers can do is create a guidebook, answering all the basic questions and opening up your city, which you should be an expert at, to your guest. The experience the guest has in the city, it's going to affect the review. It's not going to make the review positive to negative, but the reviewer probably going to type a little bit more. It's probably going to be a better positive review, which I believe does affect the search rank in Airbnb, lengthy reviews as opposed to just, it was good.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, so many great takeaways there. And to your first point about, a lot of people can't swallow their pride and just let the guest be right all the time, which is, it's difficult. Like that was something I had to learn. I just had a conversation with my buddy yesterday, Scott, who owns an amazing Airbnb and barely ever has issues. So he reached out to me because he had an issue with a guest who he said the max is 4 people and it's $75 a night for a fifth. And then on his doorbell cam, he sees 5 people walk in. So he's like, I'm going to charge him for that. And I was like, you can, but at the same time, Airbnb kind of has you by your shoestrings here that if you make them mad, they can just give you a 1-star review. And now it really brings your average down. So sometimes it's better just to eat those little things here and there in the big scheme of things to keep the higher review is what I've found.
100% agree.
Yeah. It's tough to do though.
It is.
Because you're in the right. So one question I get a lot from listeners of this show is, how do you analyze a market for a good Airbnb? Like where have you seen the best markets for Airbnb? Or if somebody wants to become a host, where do you recommend they start their search?
You mentioned at the beginning how I'm going through this process right now, and I have chosen Medellin, Colombia, to be a really good place to invest. But what I would say in general is you have to. So, why did I choose Medellin? Maybe I'll say that. I have been to Medellin numerous times, so I'm familiar with the market. And that's the first thing I would say. You can narrow down some cities based on some factors. For example, in general, I like to go to cities that are known for something, but not by the public. Let's say, for example, Istanbul, Turkey. They're really well known for hair transplants and some other cosmetic surgeries.
Wow.
But you wouldn't really know that unless you're looking for a hair transplant. But there's a huge demand. Famous people go there all the time. So they're going to stay for a few weeks, a month, maybe 2 months. What are they going to do? They're probably going to rent an Airbnb. So other things you can do is next to universities is obvious. Next to universities or any stadiums, there's a place in Antigua, Guatemala. It's world renowned for Spanish. It's a small town. They have a neutral accent. They're very cheap. There's 200 schools. There's a constant demand for students coming into town, but you wouldn't really know that unless you look it up. And I like that because it has less risk. Like you go to New York and the spotlight is on New York. You can do good in New York, but things can change and affect you really drastically. They're really newsworthy city. Anything that happens on the news could really affect you. Yeah. But going to Antigua, Guatemala, no one's heard of that. It has low risk of, like for example, let's say someone gets murdered in Antigua, Guatemala. Terrible thing. If that happens, it's like an American, let's say, it's not going to really make much noise in the media industry. But let's say someone goes to an Airbnb and kills themselves or does something bad in the Airbnb, that probably was going to make huge news.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying there?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So it's like these pockets where there's a draw that's kind of under the radar, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Also on the upward trend, that's a little harder to tell. That has to do with how the city is progressing, how the government reinvest. A great example of this is Bali. I don't like Bali at all for an investment, and I never did. But it's obvious now. But because of the pandemic. But for the longest time, I would get people messaging me all the time. I'm going to be a property manager in Bali. I'm going to buy property in Bali. The competition there was so high. The prices were so high. And I've been to Bali. The government has done nothing to improve anything related to Bali. It floods. There's air pollution, an island, but there's bad air pollution because people are burning their stuff all the time. It's crazy expensive. The gym I went to there, I don't think I ever paid more for a gym. I know a salon owner. She's like, I asked her, I was like, how are the prices? And she's like, yeah, I make a killing. I charge like US prices. I don't get why people think it's cheap here. So, but Bali had an upward trend for such a long time, up until like 2010. Now they're coasting. They have that reputation, a worldwide reputation. They're going to coast for the next, once you get there, you can coast for 10 or 20 years. Even if you don't do anything in your crappy city, you can coast for 10 or 20 years. Medellin is on the uptrend. They've got clean air. They've got drinkable water. They're building parks. They're improving the infrastructure. There's not giant holes on the street. I noticed recently, the last 6 months, there's dog walkers, somebody holding 10 dogs. That to me is a sign of an increasing city. Someone who's affluent is buying a dog and hiring someone to walk their dog. That's an upward sign to me. Look at San Francisco. You just have people every other corner, 10 dogs walking.
Yeah, that's interesting. I rarely think of cities outside the US when I consider buying Airbnbs, but that's probably not very smart. So I guess, can you kind of give a snapshot or maybe a range of what you're looking at in terms of, you don't have to give specific numbers, but like what can you get in Medellin for your money, and then what can you expect to rent it out for on Airbnb?
Okay, I just looked at a house yesterday in Parque Lleras, which is the main kind of the center of everything in Medellín. And it's listed for 200,000 US. I'll speak all in US prices here. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And you could rent it out. It's already ready to go, by the way. It's Airbnb-able, ready to go, 200,000 furnished.
Oh, wow.
And you could rent it out for $150 a night.
Wow.
Yeah. And your occupancy, I know someone who has an Airbnb in that building. Your occupancy is going to be basically 100%. I mean, like 95, 100 the whole year.
So it's a condo unit in a
Yes.
building, basically. Okay, got it. So it comes with amenity. Is there do they do assessment, like big like monthly fees for condo units down there?
The HOA fee, they do have HOA fees. It's going to be somewhere, let me convert that amount. It's going to be somewhere in the $90 a month, something like that.
Wow. And I assume there's probably a pool.
No
with
pool.
the-
Actually,
Oh,
this
okay.
building has nothing at all. So they might have a lower HOA. I'm not sure. Some HOAs have
Okay.
pools, saunas are common, steam
Yeah.
rooms are common, workout areas common. Yeah.
But you don't really need that there to get a high occupancy rate,
No,
obviously.
not in this place. No.
Yeah. Wow. That's and how about property taxes? Do they do property taxes,
They
or how does
do.
that
Yeah,
work?
they do. Let me pull up my notes here. I just looked at other units in the same building I'm at, and they were actually, so there's a building I'm staying at. There's 3 units available, and they are perfect for Airbnb. They're, I got to do a conversion here, 400 million pesos. That's about $100,000. $100,000. They're small. They're studios or 1 bedroom. They're in a great up and coming neighborhood, and you asked me about the taxes. The taxes on that would be about 1 million. No, that can't be right. Yeah, I think that is right. $400 a year.
Wow, that's
This is
incredible.
this is a very Colombia is one of the only right-leaning in terms of political policies in all of Latin America. And so you're going to see that representative in how you do business, including taxes. They're very
I see.
pro-business here. Yeah.
Okay. And I think probably the biggest concern for a lot of people who aren't familiar with investing internationally is it safe? Like, is my investment secure? Once I buy it, do I hold title, or is it possible the government could come in and say, we now own this building or this unit? What's your assessment on that?
That differs by country.
Yeah.
So you'd have to look into the country. But in general, I view it as low risk in that sense. The biggest risk I have is currency devaluation. 3 years ago, it was 2,800 pesos, Colombian pesos to the dollar. Now it has hit 4,000. So that's the biggest risk. So it's not a short-term play; it's a long-term play. It's you sell it or you get out when the timing is right. But in terms of the government, you can own the property here. That also has different rules. Can you own the piece of land, or can you just own a condo? Different rules in different places. Here in Colombia, you can actually own land, and you can also just obviously buy a condo in a building, which is more common.
Wow, that's great. That's cool, and super affordable, and the return to your investment sounds like it's pretty unbelievable. So, and not one of the big things up here in the north that we that we deal with is obviously the seasonality of it. So to not have to really deal with that down there and have pretty high occupancy year round, that makes a massive difference.
Their slogan
How
is, I think their slogan is something like the city of eternal spring. So it's basically, this is why there's literally the sun goes up and down every the same time every month, every day. All the months doesn't change. The weather is consistent. The rain is more or less consistent. That's the biggest change here. Some months rain a little more than other months.
Yeah, That's amazing. And I think that city's probably most popular from Pablo Escobar and his dealings down there. Has it become that probably makes people a little nervous? I think has it become safe to where you feel like there's you don't you're pretty safe when you're down there?
Well, this is the catch. Yeah, it's more safe here than in most U.S. cities.
Wow.
But people don't recognize that. Once you come down here, you kind of realize that. But we're in a really sweet period right now, and really for the last 10 years, well, 5 years for sure, because I went here first in 2013. The last 5 years, and it's just been getting better and better. So that's why I'm saying it's on the uptrend. Eventually, it will hit a peak because once people come here, they love it. They tell other people that tourism has been going up. Once we hit that tipping point, then we've made it, coasting for 10, 20 years profits.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Wow. Very cool. I didn't expect this podcast to be on Colombia, but we're learning a lot here. So,
yeah, we can chat more about. I just went through an exercise of identifying the supply is very easy to figure out. Any data analytics tool is going to tell you how many Airbnbs there are. The difficult part is figuring out demand. And I just went through an exercise, posted a video about it, figuring out where the demand is in terms of size of home. So,
got it. Okay. Yeah, that's what that'd be great. So check it out. Is it on your website at Optimize My Airbnb?
It's on the YouTube
channel. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So check that out, because that was one of the questions I have that people ask about all the time. And I think it's probably the biggest thing that holds people back, like in this, especially in the real estate investor community, from getting into short-term rentals. Because if I want to go buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in any city, I can easily look up what's the rent rate on that property. And it's pretty much the same for most 3-bedroom, 2-bath, a small little window there. And so you can run your numbers. But for Airbnb, it's like you look up comps and they're all over the place. And then you look at the calendar and you're like, some are rented, some aren't rented, some look like they're blocked off for the next month. Is that a booking? So how do you come up with numbers when you're talking to a new host to where they can reasonably be comfortable with the numbers on a property?
That's a great question. Yeah, I'm probably a little bit removed from that mindset because I'm so ingrained. I've been doing it for so long. I consider myself, whatever market I go into, there's winners and losers in whatever market you're in.
Okay.
And I consider myself, I will be the winner in whatever market I go in. So I'm not worried on that aspect. But how would I explain that to someone? The first thing you can do, there's the tools out there, AirDNA, all the rooms, data analytics is an up and coming tool that I really like. They're 10% of the cost of AirDNA, by the way. And so these tools are pretty good in terms of, the thing is, a lot of people I was in Mexico and I was talking with a real estate agent and he pulled up AirDNA. And he showed me a number that they had, which basically what they were trying to do was assign a number, let's say 1 to 10. It was greater, but 1 to 10 for each property in terms of how good of an investment it would be. And, this property I was looking at was like a 9. And so the agent was showing me that as if it was like proof that it's a good investment. And I was asking him, well, what's behind that number? What's that number made up of? And he had no idea. His thought process had stopped at seeing that number. And so don't take these tools as like the ultimate word. Take them as an estimate, but they are going to be pretty accurate. I have a tool on my website. It's a calculator, and it asks you 4 questions, I think 3 or 4 questions, and it gives you an estimate, lower and upper estimate, based on how much revenue you can expect. And so the consistency is there in terms of revenue, but there is seasonality, which goes up and down, and there are winners and losers. Whereas if you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, like you mentioned, in a city, you and your neighbor are probably getting the same amount of money because you're not selling it furnished. The location is the same 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom. But on Airbnb, there's also in these tools, you'll see like 50th percentile occupancy, 75th percentile, 95th percentile, the best and the worst. Man, that's a good question. It takes some, I haven't really thought about that, to be honest. I feel like I don't have a good answer for that.
No, it's fine. It's because, I mean, I know you're approaching it a lot of times already, somebody's already renting it out and you're optimizing it, and so you can turn potentially something that said like it's in the loser category into a winner just by making some changes to it. So I think that says a lot right there, just in terms of it is hard to run the numbers because of that fact. Like, it's not just like this is going to rent for X amount. It's like all the other factors that go, how do you manage it? How do you furnish it? How do you communicate with your guests? What are your reviews like? Those things all dictate revenue at the end of the day, I think. So, so that's a good point that you made. You also mentioned tools, and that's a question that comes up a lot too. It seems like every single day people mention a new tool, or I'm approached by somebody who's built a new piece of software that they want to sell, and they all like charge either a percentage of revenue or, a couple $100 a month or whatever it is. And so it seems like this space is just ripe with tools because it is an online space. It's driven by technology, so you can create a lot of tools. But what, in your opinion, what are the most essential tools that somebody should look at if they're getting started with Airbnb? Is it pricing tools? Is it property management tools? Or should they just skip tools altogether and just use Airbnb?
If you have a property, here's what you need. Smart B&B for message automation. They do a few other things, but message automation. Price Labs for a dynamic pricing tool, and Hostfully for a digital guidebook.
Got
Those
it.
are the three most essential tools.
Okay. And just use Airbnb for the rest of it in your recommendation.
Yeah, that's one of my more controversial recommendations. I recommend you become an expert on one platform. Probably that platform is going to be Airbnb. Maybe you add a second platform. I almost never recommend a separate website. For a few, sometimes that works, but for most people, not a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading that in the book initially, and it seemed counterintuitive that, I should be on as many of these platforms as possible. But you made a great point in the book that it builds up your reviews and everything. And Airbnb is like the elephant in the room, I think it seems like, and it worked great for us. I mean, we just were on Airbnb for the first year and a half or so before, once we had several listings and we had a separate property management platform that we could integrate, then it was easier to integrate more. But I thought that was really great advice, actually, and it is counterintuitive, but that's awesome. So
yeah, and I should just clarify something there. I work with hosts with up to 10, maybe 15 listings. If you're a host who has to answer to investors, or you're a property management company, you have other issues that you need to deal with. In that case, it may make sense adding a second or third listing platform. But if you're just running it yourself, you got 5 listings, it really doesn't make sense.
Okay, got it. And in your opinion, because in the book, if you haven't read the book and you're in Airbnb or in B&Bs in general, you should pick up the book for sure. But there's a ton of tactical advice, like changes you can make to your listings, like improvements. What are the top 1, 2, 3, whatever that you think would give the biggest bang for the buck, the top optimizations that you recommend to people?
The undoubtedly, no argument over this, no discussion with this with anyone. If you want to rank higher, the single best thing you can do is lower your price. No, we don't want to do that. Obviously, that's the last step in the toolbox. But if you lower your price, you will rank higher, period, across any platform you're at. And there's times where you need to do that. Airbnb seems to be in momentum based. You either have the listings coming in, reservations coming in, or you don't. So there are times when I lower my price a lot and it works. But outside of that, the single biggest thing people can focus on is the conversion. I wouldn't listen so much actually to what Airbnb says about, if you go into their help section and you read about, you try and figure out what are they looking for in a good listing. They'll say things like add, a bunch of photos, the more the merrier in photos. But my thing is actually, you want to give the least amount of photos, and this is an overarching concept, You want to communicate the most information in the least amount of time, photos, text, whatever. And so oftentimes in the photos, people have too many photos. They're not professional photos. They don't have photo captions when you're looking at they don't realize that someone who's not familiar with their space are looking at the photo. So they have some photos of something and I'm like, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
And they're like repeated photos. And then I'm sitting at a table here and there's a nice centerpiece. Oftentimes that they hire photographers. Photographers are artists. They're not businessmen. So photographers are going to photograph artistically. And so they're going to photograph the nice chandelier. Well, if it's a nice chandelier, it should go in the photo, but not just of the chandelier, not just of the centerpiece on the table. What does a guest care about that? They don't. So if your option is have a bunch of photos like this and have 42 photos, well, if you know a heat map on the website, fewer people look at the information the lower you go. At the top, they're 100%, and you go down 90, 80, 70, 60. It's the same with photos. You think 100% of people who are clicking on photo 1 are clicking on photo 42? No. So I limit photos. All of my listings that I optimize, they're going to have between like 15 and 25 photos, maximum 25. Some listings that I optimize, they have 85. I think one had more than 100 photos for like a 3-bedroom house. That's the first thing. That's conversion. So I'm trying to excite the guests. What am I getting? 15 photos of good angles, lit up. That's going to excite the guests, probably that alone. And then, all right, now what are they going to do next after that? By the way, before that, a guest uses the title. They're in P2 is the search page. Brian Chesky was influenced a lot by Steve Jobs. And so you don't have to ever click more than 3 times to get to a booking. So P2 is the search page with the map. P3 is the listing page. So on P2, that's where the guests, they've typed the city in, maybe they've narrowed down location, probably price. Then the cover photo, which we've kind of discussed already, but the title is also important. A lot of people say large, bright, spacious, 2-bedroom townhouse in town center, which is like the worst title because it doesn't communicate anything to the guest. What is going to be valuable to the guest? If you're in a big city, parking is probably something that's highly important. But if you have a basic listing, things like self-check-in, smart TV, full kitchen, those become sellable options depending on if you have a mansion, a rooftop pool, a sauna, a shower, rain, waterfall, rain head, projector TV. Like depending on your listing, you have different sellable features. List those out in the title. The title is just to get the click, to get more information to the guest. So photos, title, and by the way, the cover photo. If we're looking at that mansion and the cover photo shows the rooftop pool, you wouldn't want to have rooftop pool in the title. That's redundant. That's okay.
Good point. Yeah.
And then going to the next step. So they've looked at the title, they clicked on your listing, they looked at the photos, they like it. What are they going to do next? They're probably going to read the text. Either they're good, they're going to send you a message, or they're going to read the text. Now they could read big block text and lose interest after a while, or you can just tell them how walkable the neighborhood is. How about your 75-inch TV with Hulu and Netflix? About your 150 megabyte per second Wi-Fi? Your 3 parking spaces, on-site garage parking spaces, the rooftop pool, the gym in building, things like this. That's what I prefer. That's a conversion thing. Okay, I know exactly what I'm getting. Negative reviews are caused by mismanaged expectations. So if you can set the expectations clearly, then you're going to get the reservation and you're probably going to get a good review, assuming you're a good host and the service side is in order.
Negative reviews are caused by mismanaged expectations. That's awesome. That is, I think that's so key because you can promise, very little and, the people and just deliver a little bit above that and people rave about it. But if you promise, the Taj Mahal and it's like slightly below that, then people will say, oh, this was a terrible place to stay. So it is all about that expectation. That's amazing.
And this
Yeah.
this is why I prefer to format the listing in terms of it's an individual, not a company, a professional company, because that's increasing the guest expectations. Why?
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, super interesting. I mean, this is like a masterclass in getting your Airbnb listing right. That's such great information if you want to do it yourself. I understand you also work with people to help them. It's more of like a done for you type consulting service. How do people find out more about that?
Yeah, I've actually I'm doing some big projects in the background, so I've actually turned off a lot of my products. People can't even buy them now. I think I'll be turning them on recently because as I'm getting through these other projects, but including I'll have a new website in a few months' time. But people can find me everywhere on optimizemybnb.com, on YouTube, on Instagram. Those are the three main spots you'll find me. Optimize Your B&B is the book. But you could send me, please reach out. I love chatting with Airbnb hosts, but I prefer you send me, put a comment on a relevant blog post or video rather than send me a private message, because I'm not running a big company here. It's basically just me. And so I get a lot of emails from people who are asking good questions, but these questions should be public for other people to see rather than me just responding to one person.
Yeah, that's a great point. Awesome. Well, Danny, thank you very much for sharing all this great knowledge today. I really appreciate it. I know the community is really going to benefit from this, and you'll probably have some people reaching out. So thanks again for spending the time today.
That's great. And I'll come back in 6 months when I buy the house and I manage it in a foreign country for a few months.
Yes. Yeah. We'll analyze your B&B and see if it's optimized then. So sounds good, man. Thanks. Appreciate it.